As a BA graduate from Western Kentucky University in December of 2008. He's been employed as a high school social studies teacher since August of 2009. Mr. Bracken has been married for 4 years and has a 1.5-year-old son, Isaiah. Jeff is also involved in his church and operates an inner city ministry in Philadelphia and Detroit.
I wanted to thank Ann Miller for inviting me to come and speak before you all today. I'm very honored, but I will say the pressure just kept adding on the more and more I learned about this conference. When I first accepted it, I just anticipated maybe like a 15-minute little talk, as I've done before, and then she emailed me and said an hour, and I thought it was a typo, and I said an hour. And then my initial thought was maybe 50 people, and then I find out 350 to 400 people. And then I find out that I am supposed to make it aware that I am receiving a financial gift for doing this, which, to be honest, adds a little pressure, because now I feel like I really got to give you something worthwhile. As opposed to if it were free, I'd just come up and ramble. But I do think I have a story to share, one that hopefully would inspire you in your profession, and hopefully something you can take away with you. But before I begin, let me just say my topic is stuck in two worlds. And growing up here at Impaired, but growing up in a hearing world, and not always feeling like I really fit into that, and then also having some exposure to the deaf culture and deaf world, and not really feeling a part of that either, and just kind of being stuck right in the middle. And really what I want to do is just kind of give you an open book to my life and just share with you the journey of my life, my journey to what I consider to be success, the struggles that have come with that. And I know there are a lot of different views about decisions for oral and deaf and all that, but really what I hope is that by the end, you would just know how you can be an advocate for your clients in whatever situation they're in at that moment. And before I begin, I'd like to show you a quote by Helen Keller. I seldom think of my limitations, and they never make me sad. Perhaps there's just a touch of yearning at times, but it is vague, like a breeze among flowers. The quote has always resonated with me. I want you to know that my limitations don't make me sad. I rarely ever think about them. If anything, now, after years of struggles, I wear it with pride. And at any point in my speech where there's not really a slide to show, that quote will just be there. Instead, just as a reminder, as I share through all my struggles, that is legitimately how I feel. To start off, this is a picture of my family. It's my beautiful wife. I graduated from Dunbar High School. I grew up here in Lexington, and then when I went to Western Kentucky, that's where I met my wife, Mary. Someone who would actually tolerate me, and someone who, in my 4 years of marriage, I am learning that she is the most sacrificial woman I've ever met, and a true test of our vows. And I think you'll see what I mean later on. And then that is our 1.5-year-old son, Isaiah. We call Isaiah for short, and our 2 dogs. We are big dog lovers. And I got a couple pictures I have to show my son. These are my all-time favorite. I also coach, and not only teach at Shelby County High School, I also coach baseball. And so that picture on the left is my all-time favorite picture. I even got it on my computer wallpaper in my classroom. I'm pretty sure 20 years from now, if I'm still teaching, that picture will still be my wallpaper picture. I don't know how he'll feel about that when he's a teenager at my school, but it will be up there. So, yeah. In doing this talk, it's been really neat for me, because I've kind of taken a trip back to my past, and I kind of talked with my parents. It really caused me to even learn more about myself in my beginning years. As a matter of fact, the other day I was watching home videos, and I was watching my first year birthday. Turning 1 year old, and so they had the birthday cake for me in the hat, and my wife and I were watching the video, and I had my older brother next to me, and my mom was trying to get a picture. My mom keeps yelling my name, Jeff, Jeff, Jeff. And then my older brother's Dan, and Dan looks right away, but me, it just looks like I'm being stubborn and just ignoring her and just, not paying any attention to her. And so I could imagine the frustration they were going through, thinking I'm just a stubborn baby. But it makes sense now, knowing that I was hearing impaired. And eventually, by the time I was about 2 and a half, my parents became very suspicious. My dad started doing tests and coming up behind me and just hitting his hand real hard behind me to see if I'd respond. And he said that he would come up behind me and say, Jeff, you want a cookie? And of course, when I don't respond to wanting the cookie, they knew something was up. And my mom said that I was a talker. I mean, I blabbered away, but she said it was like I spoke in 7 tongues. You just never knew what I was saying. It was just, it was nonsense. And so they took me, got me tested, and turned out I was diagnosed as being hearing impaired. And my parents' feelings was a mixed reaction. They were relieved because it explained the delay in my speech. It explained a lot of my behavior. But of course, just the fear of the unknown. What does this mean for his future? Will he be able to succeed? Will he be able to learn? Will he fit in? Will he belong? Will he be accepted? Let me just say, I'm going to have my parents stand up. They're right over here. My parents were very influential in my life and overcoming my obstacles. I thought for all you audiologists up here, this is a copy of one of my audiograms from I think 10 years ago. So just thought you might be interested in seeing that. So I guess the first step then was to get me fitted for some hearing aids. And I'd have to say I'm not sure, when I was 2 and a half when I got them, I'm not sure if I liked my hearing aids because just weeks later I stuck them in the microwave and nuked my hearing aids. And then I did it again a year later. So but I will say I know today I consider my hearing aids my lifeline. Just a quick story to kind of get that point across. I was in Gatlinburg with some friends during college, and we took a trip down to Gatlinburg, and we were doing some hiking, and there's this place where you can just kind of hike these boulders through a river, and there was a tree sticking up, and I was an idiot and climbed the tree, and I was kind of hanging from it, and I was about 12 feet above, and there were 2 huge boulders in a pond of water, and the branch snapped, and I fell straight down, and I landed, luckily, thank God, right between the 2 boulders. Now, all my friends and my wife, who I think we might have been engaged at the time, were just freaking out, thinking the worst had happened to me. And I just shot up out of the water with my hearing aids out and said, drive off quick, I gotta have these. And so they're thinking I'm busting my head open and all I care about are my hearing aids. It's funny, every time I get new hearing aids, I hear something new. In high school, I'll never forget, I got a new set of hearing aids, and I walked out the next morning to go to school. I was walking out to my car, I was walking in the grass, and I hear this crunching noise, and I stopped, and the noise stopped. I started walking again, heard the noise again, I stopped, and first time, I was a junior in high school, first time I'd ever heard walking in grass, and it just made me realize why I was always so bad at like catching the flag when I think I'm sneaking up behind someone real quiet, and they always turn around, and it finally made sense. I get it. And my most recent new set of hearing aids, I now go to Hauser Hearing Institute in Louisville, which is right by the interstate. And so I got fitted for these new hearing aids, and we were trying it out. And I was like, well, there's a lot of like feedback noise or something going on. She said, no, that's the interstate. That's the highway you hear. And I do, even though I nuked them when I was a child, they have been very important to me. And so after I got my hearing aids, my parents, they took the first step and took me to speech therapy. And my mom kept a journal, this little yellow book here. And what she did is, and this is why I say my parents are so influential, that the care that they had for me to provide me with a better future. She kept a journal monitoring my progress. And I'm going to read one of the entries though and give her kind of a hard time. You know that Italian food that you put cheese on it with pepperoni, you know what you call it. I don't say the word because to this day I still kind of get teased by my friends how I say the word. And I was reading through this, and actually what I'll do is I'll say, hey, let's order some, and I'll sign it. And So I'm reading through this journal, and it says my mom made a post. This was just a few weeks after I began speech therapy. It says, Jeff tried to say, I'm trying to be more persistent with Jeff. I don't want to give him anything unless he tries to say a word. Sometimes I forget and just give it to him. I have to remember to make him work for it. And so, Mom, I'd have to say I will blame you as to why I cannot say that word today, because you didn't make me work for it. But that actually was funny. Last night we were sitting at dinner with my parents and my wife, and they were even trying to teach me how to say it correctly last night. And I think I finally got it, but it still just kind of makes me nervous. But a speech therapist that worked with me, it's remarkable reading what happened. You know, my first word was more. That's the first word I said clearly. And my own son said that word about a year and a half to 2 years before I did. I don't know how I feel about that, but in this journal, as I read through it, I am amazed at my parents' concern for me, and kept saying he has a long way to go. Just the pride they had in me as well, and how hard I was working even as a young kid. And within a matter of months, I was saying 7-word sentences. And so, you know, I owe a lot to my speech therapist, but a big part of my young childhood was the Lexington Hearing and Speech Center. And there are a couple people there. One was Miss Angie Elton. She was one of my teachers, who I consider to be one of my best friends. And by the time I got to high school, she had moved out of Lexington, and I was playing a baseball game in Madison Central, where she lived at the time, and I still went and saw her. That's the connection I had with her. She came and saw me at my graduation. She was invited to my wedding. So she was someone who, even from a young age, made a lasting impact on me to set me on a path towards success. The other person at Lexington Hearing and Speech Center, which I'm sure maybe everyone in here may know, this is Miss Ann Olson. So you can stand up. You know, hearing her, I got to talk to her before coming up here, and just hearing her tell me how proud she is of me and how far I've come, it just means a lot. She was my audiologist at a speech center. And you talk about someone who wanted to be there. She was a friend of me. I loved going to the speech center because of her. The belief she had in me and everything she helped me overcome, it's just remarkable. So I didn't think, wow, all right, well, there you go. But just to, you know, the speech center, just to emphasize how much it had an impact on my life, I just looked at what my parents did. My dad was so impressed with the work they'd done with me that he took it upon himself to do some community service. He worked at the time for IBM, and they had a program where if you do put in so many community service hours, that IBM would donate some money or some equipment towards the cause. And so he put in so many community service hours. Here's a picture of us out front of it. And what basically happened is through his community work and work with the children, IBM gave what you all may be familiar with, the IBM speech viewer. And so the Lexington Hearing and Speech Center got their first speech viewer because of my dad's work. And so that's actually a picture from a newspaper article, front page of the City and State paper for Lexington, and that is my dad worked with me on the speech viewer at the speech center. The article just talks about what the speech viewer does for deaf and children with speech problems, and not only that, but it made such a lasting. The speech center had such a huge impact that my mom took it upon herself that after I left and graduated, my mom actually became a teacher there and taught there for 5 or 7 years, and that's actually how she knows Ann Miller. She met Ann Miller through working at the speech center. So I owe a lot to the speech center and the progress I made, and that allowed me to transition into public schools. So by kindergarten, I would do half a day at Garden Springs Elementary and then half a day at the speech center. And then by first grade, I was fully mainstream at Garden Springs. And the IEP I had there, my parents said was great for them to know what goals to set for me. And what they learned from that is they had to raise my expectations. They didn't really know what kind of expectations to have, but the work that I was doing and how far along I'd come, they realized and learned quick that I was going to overcome a lot, and they had to raise their expectations. And I had another, while at that school I had Susan Weisenfeld, who was someone who tutored me one-on-one, and she was who I considered to be my best friend. all through elementary school. To where by the time I got to middle school and high school, I had pretty much just funneled out of having an IEP. I didn't really need one anymore. I pretty much made straight A's. By the time I got to college, I got a full tuition scholarship on academics, and while in college, I earned some more scholarships through my department, and so I really excelled academically. But the thing that was a struggle with that social side of it, getting into, even in elementary school, I had an FM system, the kind where it was like a space pack on your chest, and I hated it. I did, and I don't even think, I got rid of it in 4th grade, and I don't think my parents even knew why until just last week when I told them, so I was going to talk about it here. I got teased for it in the bathroom. In the bathroom I would kind of get teased for having this weird, funny thing, and by 4th grade I insisted on getting rid of it. And then in middle school, the lunch. You go to the cafeteria, I don't know how you hearing people do it. I don't know how you hearing people are able to have a conversation with 10 people while eating. I just don't get it. I can follow one person who's looking at me and try to read their lips, and then by the time it gets to someone else and I find who that is, I'm gone. And I truly believe you can watch the way someone eats and you can know if they're deaf, hearing, or hard of hearing. Deaf people take forever to eat because whenever I eat with them, they're shining forever, and then they'll take a bite and then they shine some more. Hearing people, I guess you eat at a normal pace. Hard of hearing people, we eat really fast because there's no point in me being a part of the conversation. So it's me and my food, and I love it. And my mom always said I had bad eating habits. My wife says I had bad eating habits, but you know what? I blame it on my hearing. So so that was always a challenge, though. I was well liked. In high school, I was elected to homecoming court all 4 years. I was well liked, but I never felt a part of a group. I had some friends, a very small group of friends, but I really struggled with that. I remember being invited to my first party in middle school and going and just thinking to myself, what a waste of time. Because of all the music and all the people there talking, I just sat in a corner. And I told myself, I will never go to a party again. It was just a waste for me. As a matter of fact, in college, I had a 10-person rule. If I got invited somewhere and there were more than 10 people, I wouldn't go. And so there was that, and then watching movies. Going to movies, I have learned that subtitles help. And I don't know why movies, whenever it gets to the suspenseful part, they always whisper. Or they always say, they're on the phone and the worst movie I ever went to was Kingdom of Heaven. And in this movie, there's a king and he has leprosy and he's wearing a mask. And so through the entire movie, there's no lip reading. And I walked out of that movie theater, I'm like, what a waste of $7 in 2 hours. And even just conversation with people, whenever this was, I'll be honest, the most frustrating thing, and this isn't just me, this is probably all hearing impaired people, is what? And then eventually the other person just says, never mind. There's no worse reminder of what, my limitations than to just say never mind and move on. And I got that all the time, and I'd always ruin the joke, because right when it gets to the climax of the joke seems to be when my hearing aids don't work or something. Probably the best example or just how often miscommunication happened from a lack of being able to or lip read. There was one time my family was on a road trip, and my younger brother was talking about how his friend had gotten a paintball gun for his birthday. And I started saying, well, those have been outlawed. I just read a story that it's illegal. No, it's not. And a fight ensued. And we're fighting in the van, and we're going back and forth. Finally, my mom stops and said, Jeff, what do you think we're talking about? And I said, pit bulls. We learned that, no, paintball guns. And that kind of thing is no more true than with songs. I will not sing a song in public because my wife, every time I sing at home, sing a song, my wife is like, those are not the words. Right? When I was playing baseball in high school at practices, they would play a lot of songs over the loudspeaker. And now I cannot sing, okay, but one of the songs, the song Low Rider. I had always thought that it was Oh My goodness. And then, but the all-time favorite, this is usually people's favorite example. There's a song that we were singing in our church, and it was, Lord, prepare me to be a sanctuary, and it'd go on, and then at the end, it would be, I exalt thee. And for some reason, our church never had that last part up there. I guess because you were supposed to know what it was. And after a couple of years of singing it my way, I was at our high school FCA, and they had printed all the lyrics out. We were doing that song, and I looked at the lyrics at the end, and it said, I exalt thee, and I went up to the person that had printed them out, and I said, these are wrong. No, they're not. Basically, for 2 years, I have been singing, I am salty. So, hey, and to me it made sense, because there's a scripture reference that says you are to be the salt of the earth. So really, I think I should just write a new song and just change the words. But once I got to college, that's when I really got exposed to kind of the deaf culture and got around a lot of new deaf people. And really, I had a couple at Dunbar that I ate lunch with sometimes, so I knew a little bit of sign, but I took ASL and really got involved in the deaf community there. And I met some wonderful, wonderful people, some truly amazing people. And I wanted to be a part of it so bad that at that time they had all had a sidekick. And if you were deaf, you had a sidekick. And my parents, for Christmas, I think it was my sophomore year in college, I got my first cell phone for Christmas, my brothers and myself, and I was actually mad. I'm a terrible son. I was mad at this gift because I wanted a sidekick. And I insisted on getting one because I could be a part of the... but, you know, it didn't take long to realize that I really didn't belong in that world either. And it was just, you know, I really was just kind of stuck in the middle. And so really what it comes down to for me, when I look back, is an issue of identity. And when I took psychology in college, I loved that class. And I think back to a couple things I learned in that class. One is Maslow's hierarchy of needs, which, you know, he argues for someone to achieve their full potential, they need certain things. You need shelter, food, water, and then you need safety and security. And then once you had that, the next step is you need love and a sense of belongingness. And when I look back, when I was in college and I look back at my high school years, that's so true for me. The struggles I had in feeling a sense of belonging, and the difficulties I had in social interaction, and the times even sitting in a car, sitting in the back seat, and I'm always trying to look in the rearview mirror to read the lips of the driver, and just not being able to really get in any kind of conversation. And I realized this is true for me. Another one was Erik Erikson's stages of psychosocial development, that by the teenage years, you know, these steps that we go through, and that when you're a teenager, what it really comes down to is your sense of identity, to get to your maximum potential, that you know who you are, you know your role in society. And this was so true for me, because even though in college I wanted to find a fit with the deaf culture, I had still, by college, I knew what my identity was, though. And that happened in high school, and that happened at my church. My Bible study leader was encouraging me to read through the book of John. And so I was reading a chapter at night, not really understanding any of it. And then one night at our Bible study, we were talking about WWJDs. That was such a big, you know, what would Jesus do? And we were talking about different other interpretations of it. And one of the kids said, WWJD, why was Jeff deaf? And hey, yeah, it's funny. And we all laughed about it. I was 15 years old at the time. And while we laughed about it, though, little did he know that really was something that was burdening me. Something that I was really struggling with as I was dealing with all these social issues and the sense of belonging to a group. And I went home that night and I demanded God, if there was one, for an answer. And it really was weighing on my heart. It was something that was really important to me. But I still read my chapter for that night out of the book of John. And it was the same night. In my reading, I felt like I had found my answer. It was John chapter 9, and it talks about this man that was born blind. And Jesus was walking down the road. His disciples asked, was he born blind because he sinned or his parents sinned? And Jesus said, no. None of that. He was born blind so that the works of God could be shown in this life. And for some reason that just clicked with me. That I admitted for myself that God must be real, that all these limitations that I'm dealing with is going to be used somehow, that God would kind of show up and show off. And what that did for me is that's where I got my identity. I no longer, like when Helen Keller said, I seldom think of my limitations and they never make me sad. That was the point where I reached that. It did not care. It did not matter anymore. That I personally had entered a relationship with Christ, and that had defined everything I was and everything I ever will be. And that was a game changer for me. And from there, my life in terms of success and overcoming my obstacles really took off. I got to speak to the state Senate for Senate Bill 152, which was a bill to get insurance covering hearing aids for young children, and it passed unanimously. But I even think some bigger things. When I was in college, my sophomore year, I was back home in Lexington one summer, and I was at Shield Hill Park playing basketball, and it was 90 degrees, and the water fountain was broke. And I was with a friend, and we talked about maybe we should bring some Gatorade or something up next week. And so next week we brought a bunch of Gatorade up. We were playing basketball, and we started passing them out. And the response was overwhelming. I didn't realize it was such a big deal. Everybody said, "Why are you giving these out free? What are the strings attached here?" And there were none. I just simply said, Christ came to serve, not to be served, and that's what I want to do right here. And someone came up to me and said, "I moved here from Philly 2 years ago." He said, "Where I'm from, nobody would even think of doing this." And it just hit me. I just felt like God wanted me to do that. And so I just took $600 that I had made from working that summer. I stuck it in my pocket, and next spring break, I just drove to Philly. I'd never been there before. I didn't know anybody there. My youth minister's wife knew someone in the Salvation Army there, so I went there, and they gave me somewhere to stay. But what had happened that spring break, this was the basketball court that I ended up at. And bear in mind, this whole time I am thinking about my hearing impairment. Because I'm talking about being with people that I don't know, and when I play basketball, I sweat, okay? And my hearing aids, I cannot deal without my hearing aids, and I do not want them to get wet. And I had concerns about how am I really going to do this and communicate with these people. And I learned that what a stupid, foolish question. What had happened that week, I actually found a few guys on a street corner and said, "Hey, I want to play basketball." And this is just in the middle. This is in Kensington and Allegheny, which is considered one of the most poverty-stricken neighborhoods in America. And one of them reluctantly agreed to go with me, which I'm shocked. And after playing for a while, he finally asked me, "So who are you? What are you doing here?" Because listen, I was the only white guy there, and I know that. I had some eyes staring at me, and when I told him, I just shared my testimony. I shared what God had done in my life, what I'd been going through. And he said, the reason why no one else came is because they thought you were an undercover cop. And so I kind of got my way in. And initially what happened, basically by midweek, I showed up one day. And there were about 40 guys at this park playing. And they were just shooting around. And I pull up with all my Gatorade. And they said, "Hey, you going to play, right?" I said, "Well, y'all go ahead and play. I'll get ready." And he said, "No, we've been waiting for you." Well, 7 years later, I never saw those people again. I was going back every year, but those people that first week I never saw again until this past summer, 7 years later. And I went to this park, and this guy came up to me. Hey, my nickname was Duke. I said, "Hey, Duke, I remember you when you were..." And he went on to tell me that they had all skipped school that day to play with me. Yeah, and being a teacher, I didn't know how I felt about that. But what did it turn into, though? After that week, I went back the next year and brought a group with me, and that next year I found out that one of the guys I had met the year before was shot and killed a month later. And it just hit me, I can't just come and give them a message of hope and then just leave them. And so basically I just decided I was going to spend my summers there because I was still in college. And that's the beauty of being a teacher. I still go to have my summers. And so what ended up happening that next summer was the Salvation Army allowed me to use their gym. And it started out as the gym would be open until about 2 in the morning. And about 2 in the morning, I would still have about 50 guys playing basketball there. And we just became one big family. And I would do Bible studies with them and just talk with them, just build relationships with them. And it turned into a league. The first year we had 6 teams, then we had 8 teams, then 12 teams, then we had 16 teams, and then the year after that we had 22 teams with 4 teams on a wait list. We didn't even have enough volunteers to keep up with it, and I raised money to get them jerseys. You can kind of see our sign in the back, but it was called Salvation League, and our motto was came from Joel 2:32, whoever calls the name of the Lord should be saved. And so from this league, phenomenal things happened. I mean, phenomenal things happened. It was truly amazing seeing how I was being used despite my limitations to really take something to a whole new level, and that God was using me and working through me. And if you're interested, that at the top there, Christ2Philly.blogspot.com, it's actually a blog that I kept throughout several years of just amazing stories that have happened. And through a lot of heartbreak, we were broken into several times, but it was truly amazing. The other thing, talking about my limitations, is being a teacher and trying to work all through those issues. I have an instructional coach who worked with me and many other teachers in the school, and just they'll observe classrooms and just kind of help me reflect on my teaching. And this guy's name is Baxter Moise. He's an awesome guy. And I'll never forget, last year was the first time he was with me, and we were sitting down after one of my classes reflecting on it, and he was telling me he was sitting in the back of the room, and everything's going on in the front of the room, and then he sat down and just started telling me all these things. Well, this group, they were talking about some awesome stuff. This guy was saying this, and this, and this. And I just stopped him. I said, wait, you mean you can sit in the back and you can actually know what someone is saying in the midst of all of that chatter? And so even today, I'm learning more and more about my own hearing impairment, because I cannot do that. And I realized that I made some adaptations as a teacher, like subconsciously, that I didn't even know I had made, just to accommodate for my, I guess, limitations in hearing. I was blown away at what he was able to pick up on just from sitting in the back. And that has shaped a lot of how I teach. How often I have them write on little boards and hold them up so I can see what they're thinking, and how much I got to get right in their business, up in their face, so I know what they're saying, and they get used to that. But in my teaching the past few years, something else has come up in terms of overcoming obstacles, and this is where I learned why identity really matters, and when you work with your clients, why it's so important. A few years ago, I became diagnosed with Usher syndrome. If you don't know what Usher syndrome is, it's basically the leading cause of deaf blindness. I had always thought in the last few years I was getting clumsy. Trip over. I'll never forget, we were in a parking lot somewhere, and I just tripped right over a curb. Just being so mad and just thinking I'm clumsy running into stuff. But eventually, my wife and my mom started getting really suspicious, and I noticed playing basketball seemed very different. Something's not right, and what really did it in, my mom, one time we were staying the night at my parents' house. I was getting water out of the fridge in the morning. I had no idea my mom had come downstairs, and she was standing right next to me just going, and I was just getting water. I didn't say any, and then I turned and she's there, and I just jumped. So and she just said, you need to get your eyes checked out. And so I went and got them checked out, took a visual field test, and you see a red dot and you push the button when you see it. And my wife got to stand behind me and watch, and the whole time I seen these red dots, I'm hitting the buttons, I got this, there's nothing wrong, I'm just clumsy. And we walked out of the room, and my wife just said, Jeff, you failed that miserably. She's like, you bombed that. It was, yeah. And so just to kind of give you an idea, this is maybe normal vision. You see about 180 degrees. What I see in the next picture isn't what I see. Oh yeah, I'm not at that point with Usher syndrome. What it is your night blindness goes. You go night blind first. And when I got diagnosed, that made a lot of sense, because that explains why my car and Mom, Dad, I don't know if I ever told you this. I'm not sure. But in college, I was driving home we had a get together at this farm. We were fishing. I was driving home, and I thought I saw the road. I turned left and ended in a ditch. And then another time where, now my parents do know about this one, where I thought I was turning into the parking lot, and I just hopped the curb and popped the tire. And my friends just think I'm a terrible driver, and I did too, but it all makes sense now. I realized, I just wasn't seeing right. And so after night blindness, you begin to lose your peripheral vision, and it's a gradual thing. And I'm not at that point yet. I'm at about 60 degrees, so I guess about 30% maybe of what you see, and so I can no longer drive now you can kind of see why I said my wife is the most sacrificial woman ever, because she drops me off at work, she picks me up from work, she takes me wherever, she drives me everywhere. I have my personal chauffeur. It's nice to feel important. But yeah, that's that. Now, when I got diagnosed, I began to question, can I continue teaching? Can I really continue teaching these students when it's become obvious? And I was tripping over backpacks every day. I mean, 10 times a day I'm tripping over a backpack, and I'm just thinking I'm clumsy. And so I really had this question, can I continue to teach? And I sat down with my principal, I said, this is what's going on. I really don't know if I'm going to be able to. We talked about maybe shifting my role to a guidance counselor and get my master's. But looking back, what a stupid, foolish question to ask, if I could continue teaching. The dumbest question I probably asked in my entire life. I just spent my whole life overcoming an obstacle of being hearing impaired, from a child dealing with speech and then on through the issue through high school. What a dumb, stupid question. So dumb, I realized that the next year after being diagnosed, that is a picture of me receiving Teacher of the Year award. I'm ashamed that I asked that question in the first place. And as I was dealing with this, the first year I didn't tell my students, I didn't want them to know what they could get away with, but now they know, and I'm so thankful. Why? When I talk about my issue of identity and how important that was for me in my life and how my faith helped me find my identity, I teach 150 high school students who struggle with their identity every day. And what this is allowed to do, I'm actually going to show you a video. My older brother works at a church in Ohio. They were doing a series about the cross being your final say, like your identity. And he felt that my story would fit for his church. And so I'm going to show you this video.
Most average babies say their first word between 9 to 15 months, and I was 2.5 years old and hadn't spoken a word yet. My parents were suspicious, took me to a doctor. Turns out I was hearing impaired, and from there it was just a big struggle for me as I tried to discover, who I am, what's my identity. Going around elementary school with something called an FM system, you got a big, looks like a space pack on your chest, and so how it can be a barrier in the classroom to learning. I mean, take the smallest thing. A teacher turns to write something on the board and is talking. I don't know what's being said. I need that lip reading. And so you can think of all the barriers, but I wasn't going to let that get in the way. Why am I going to let that define what I become? I remember one time we were in a Bible study at church, and that was when WWJD was such a big thing. What would Jesus do? And we were talking about different things we could use WWJD for. And so one person said, well, why was Jeff Duck? That same night, I went into my room and I threw up that question. I said, God, why? Well, that night I opened up the Bible, John chapter 9. That was my chapter for the night. And I read about a man born blind. And disciples were walking down the road and asked Jesus, why was he born blind? Did he sin? His parents sin? Why did this happen? And he said, no, he was born blind so that the works of God could be shown in his life. And that was the moment I decided I was going to be a Christian, that I realized that my hearing impairment is not an obstacle, is to be used for glory. From there, I began to see all the ways God was using me. He used me, he had me speak in our state senate to get insurance for hearing aids for kids. He had me, in college, I was doing deaf ministry. Everybody's got some kind of obstacle, whether it's a physical disability or whether it's some emotional disability. Everybody's got something. It happens, who cares? Life isn't about our own comfort. It never was. I partially tore my ACL, and my other knee I fully tore it and had surgery. I've had surgery on my nose because of deviated septum. My lung just collapsed 3 times, which I had a chest tube all 3 times, and then they had to chemically repair my lung. I have had testicular torsion. That was not fun. I have had appendicitis. I have had a separated bone in my foot. So let's run this down. Jesus could say, I got flogged and whipped and put a crown of thorns on my head. I got nailed to a cross. He didn't give up. He was victorious. He changed the definition of the cross. I want to change the definition of hearing impairment. I've been growing up with hearing impairment my whole life, and I've learned how to overcome that. And now being a new teacher, just my 3rd year, learning how to overcome that in the classroom. And then as of a year or 2 months ago, I get diagnosed with Usher syndrome and then told that I'm going blind. With my vision normal out here, and now I don't even see my hands till right here. My wife was pregnant when I was diagnosed. And the only thing that was on my mind was I'm not going to be able to watch my child grow up. But then I remembered what I've been dealing with my whole life. And it only took me a day to remember and go back to Christ. Christ defines my life. Christ has the final say. Christ is victorious. Just as Jesus spent time with his disciples, I'm trying to spend time with students and take it beyond the classroom and invest in them and connect them to church so that they can realize that there's something greater, right? Something greater than their own life, and that's Jesus Christ.
When you look at all the spontaneous pneumothorax, the spontaneous testicular torsion, and all that stuff, my parents always joked that I was going to spontaneously combust one day. And it's a true test when my wife married me when we said our vows in sickness and in health. I mean, she knew my medical history, okay? And as 10 days after we got married, I had actually tore my ACL in Philadelphia. 10 days after we were married, I had my surgery, and we were staying at my parents' house because it was done here in Lexington, and we lived in Bowling Green at the time. And the day we were going to go back home, my wife got really sick and was just throwing up everywhere. And so my mom actually had to go home with us. I couldn't take care of her. She couldn't take care of me. So my mom had to take care of both of us. And, so a true test of our vows there. But this video, we underestimate the power of our story sometimes. My brother posted this on my Facebook, and I didn't think anything of it. What happened, though, was just an overwhelming response by the number of students that I have at my school that saw it. And the overwhelming just reaction as more and more students came up and told me they saw it and what it meant to them. And the struggles that they were dealing with in their own lives. Physical limitations, emotional, mental, whatever it may be. And that has caused me to redefine the way I teach. I focus so much more now on this idea of belonging in a group, and this idea of social acceptance. In high school, I actually had a student say this earlier in the year. I have freshmen. I teach freshman AP Human Geography, and I teach junior U.S. History. And the freshmen are much more enthusiastic, much more out there, much more. And the juniors are a little more laid back and a little harder to get them to talking with each other. And someone said, well, that's because we know who our friends are by now. Like we know, they've got their identity by then. But there are so many of my students that I can see in their faith that they are struggling to find some kind of acceptance. And so I redefine the way I teach. And I focus much more on providing an environment where they can leave whatever they have at the door, and then they would be like family in my class. The other day we did a Harlem Shake video in my class. If you know the new Harlem Shake trend, some of you may not, but we made one in my class, and that class is such a wide, diverse group of people. People you wouldn't find, normally talking to each other, just having a time in their life. And I teach too, okay? We don't just do. But I will say this, in my attempt to create that environment where they feel like family, I do many, many different things. And I do them all throughout the year. And it's a struggle because I teach U.S. history. That's a lot of content to cover. But let me just say that I have gotten more accomplished with them, taking the time to create that family atmosphere than I ever had before. And the result shows. I've got many special ed students who have written me after a year, well, since the beginning of the school year, this year till now, can write me a well thought out thesis paper, where at the beginning of the year couldn't give me more than a paragraph. The result shows because they are in an atmosphere, I think, where I can personally invest in them and that they know that they have each other's backs. My students belong to something bigger and they're bought into it. And I want that to translate to your profession, whether it's in your research or the clients you deal with with speech therapy. We need advocates. And I don't mean advocates where, to the government, the American with Disabilities Act. I mean an advocate to their personal life. An advocate for them and to them, to where they know. I need you all to be, the Ann Olsen in my life. Someone who really personally invests in the story of the people you work with. I don't think there's anything wrong with making it personal because too often people don't realize the potential they can have and the impact they can make in society. A couple months ago when I saw in the headlines, you may have been familiar with the story about the twins in Belgium. Deaf twins in their 40s, had lived together their whole life, and then they found out they were going blind. And in Belgium, it is legal to be euthanized if you can show a clear sign of suffering, and they chose to do that. I have a hard time accepting that. I had them up, extremely, I had a race with them, because they talked about it, they couldn't stand the thought of not being able to see each other. And the relationship I have with my two brothers, I totally get that. But I had a hard time understanding why once they go blind, they feel like they are of no use in society, and feel like that they are of no impact to the people in the community around them. And I think you all can play a part in that. That you all play a part in investing in these people so that they can know what they can do. And someone, I don't remember who said this, but someone said, do for one what you wish you could do for all. And I think if you start there, you can make quite a difference. And here's the reality. Our society celebrates disabilities. I'm thankful I live in the generation I do, to where I'm not institutionalized because of my hearing impairment like I may have been years ago. But today, our society celebrates disabilities. Take this. Go for the next. Let me point this out. Just the first statistic. I saw the study done a couple months ago, and in the hearing population, 18.7% did not graduate from high school, compared to 44.4% of hard of hearing students who did not graduate from high school. That bothers me. And I think you all can help play a role in that if you have a hearing impaired student or any. I know a lot of our clients have multiple disabilities. I'm sure they do. But going about celebrating disability, Jim Abbott's one of my favorite athletes. Born without a right hand, yet still pitched in the major leagues. And whenever he would pitch the ball, he'd flip the glove over to the arm that has the hand. And we have celebrated that. Another example, recently I saw Jacob Barnett. This kid, he's 12 years old. He's considered the next math genius. He has severe autism, and he is the next math genius, redefining some of Einstein's work. And what it's not that he's so smart that amazes me. What amazes me is autistic children have a hard time socially. What amazes me is his ability to get up. He did a TED Talk, if you know what that is, and spoke in front of a large audience. And just sitting there in awe of his ability to do that, to not let his autism be a limitation to making an impact on society. It blew me away. Another story in Louisville, Kentucky, at a Southeast Christian church, I read a story about this. She's 20 years old, deafness is no disability for Southeast member. And as I read her story, it was so much like mine. It was so much like mine, and her interpreter actually invited her to church, and from that she found her identity in Christ like me, and our stories are so parallel. We celebrate disability today, and even though generations ago a lot of them will be institutionalized, it's actually not a foreign idea in the days Jesus walked. I live my life by a couple of these scriptures, if you don't mind me sharing. 1 Corinthians 1:27, but God chose the foolish things of the world to shame the wise. God chose the weak things of the world to shame the strong. And the other one, the other verse, 2 Corinthians 12:9, but he said to me, my grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness. Therefore I will boast all the more gladly about my weaknesses, so that Christ's power may rest on me. It's not a foreign idea there either, and I think it's true. I think it shows in our society today how often we celebrate people with disabilities that overcome and teach us things. And perhaps there's no better example than Moses. When Moses, when the burning bush, the story goes, that God said, you're going to lead my people out of the promised land. And Moses said, well, who am I to do that? Because Moses stuttered. He said, I am not of eloquent speech. No one's going to follow me. No one's going to listen to me. He stuttered. And when he asked, who am I? God simply ignored his question. He just said, I will be with you. And I think the same thing for me. Who am I, hearing impaired, going blind? Who am I to go to Philly to reach out to 150 old teenage young adults, and who am I to teach 150 students a day? Who am I to start this? I do the inner city ministry in Detroit now. I just went there this past summer to try and do something there. Who am I to do that with all these limitations? And God simply ignores me because it's a stupid question. It's a stupid question. What I ask of you is just to remember that the human species are a remarkable species, that we have the ability to adapt, and that we do. And I think of all the times I adapt, even with my vision. You know, I didn't realize how naturally when I walk looking down so I don't trip over anything. I had never really realized that until I got a cane and realized, oh my gosh, look what I can see when I look up, right? And let me just say, I'm about to close, but I have to share this story. After that video was made, that my brother made, and all the students talking to me, I took it upon myself to start writing a blog some more, to be more open about it, because I realized that this is kind of like a role model opportunity for my students that struggle. And in my blog, I share my top 5 best usher moments dealing with my vision. I'm going to share one of them because my dad thinks it's the funniest thing. I don't know how appropriate it is, but it begins with me in the shower and there being no soap. And when there was no soap, my wife was sick. I didn't want to bother her, and we keep our soap in our garage in a little storage bin. And so I just hopped out of the shower. I said, well, I'm just going to go down to the garage, and I don't need to put anything on, so I'll go down and get it and come right back up. So I'm butt naked, okay? And when I walk downstairs, I go into the garage, and things when I walk out where you would probably see the garage door over here, I don't. And so I think you guys already know where I'm going with this, but so I immediately look down because there's steps. So I look down to find it. So I look down and I turn. So the garage door's here, the storage bin's here, and I go. I open it up, and I bend all the way over to get soap out at the bottom. And I turn around, and I'm already looking down to find the steps. I go up, and then when I got out of the shower, came downstairs. Mary went down there and said, "Jeff, did you know you left the garage door open all night?" So I was in my garage naked, and here's the worst part. It was right about 6:25 in the morning, and my neighbor across the street, she'll tell you, every morning at 6:30 has a smoke on his front porch. I might have moved him, I don't know. But yeah, humans adapt. We adapt, whether we know it or not, and when we belong and we feel purpose and we know what our identity is and we know where we fit in our society, we can do some remarkable things. And as you work with your clients, I just ask that you remember that disabilities are not a barrier for success, but that they are simply opportunities for excellence, and that you would impart that to your clients. That's what I ask of you, and that's what I've seen in my own life. I thank you so much for allowing me to share with you all today.